I planned out the Year of FDS, I had to start from a list of episodes and plot out release dates for each of them to ensure that everything fit nicely and neatly into 366 days. Since there's slightly more than 183 Famicom Disk System releases, I'd have to have episodes on consecutive days a few times, and I was trying to lay that out kind of neatly. Well, on my list was Tanigawa Koji no Shogi Shinan 2 Shinban, and that's a very slightly modified re-release of a game I've already talked about. Essentially an expansion pack that changed out the shogi puzzles. Technically it has its own release code, so I could have included it here, but I wouldn't have anything different to say, and I've already kinda talked about this special re-release in the first episode about that game. So for today, I'm going to talk about a different Famicom Disk System game. One that wasn't on my list and shouldn't have been on my list. Aliens, Alien 2. And the reason it wasn't on my list is because it was never released. Square was planning for a late 1987 release of this game, and then they cancelled it. Eventually, a copy got leaked, and this version is mostly playable. It's also definitely incomplete and kind of buggy. The impression I have is that it's a kind of a checkpoint beta, something where they had enough game systems and levels complete enough to make a demo build of the game, and then passed around for feedback and a determination on whether or not it was even worth going forward with it. No one at Squaresoft has ever come out and said why they cancelled this version, but I have two interconnected theories. First, and the most likely one, they determined they couldn't make a profit on it. The licensing fees were pretty high, there were still a couple of months of work left to do on the game, and they'd almost definitely have to rework it to be a cartridge release. Those are pretty good reasons for a company to cut their losses and walk away. The other possibility that comes to mind for me, and this one's more of a stretch, is that Square didn't have the license to make console games. When it came to making video games in the 80s, they tended to split the licenses up pretty fine. Computer games, console games, handheld games, LCD games, these could be spread across multiple companies. Square wound up releasing their computer game versions of Aliens, and the best known of these is the MSX version, so it might be a situation where they thought they had the rights to make a disk system version of the game, and then showed it to Activision, who they licensed the games from, and then got told, you can't sell that. Both of those scenarios are total speculation on my part, just guesses based on occurrences that have stopped other games from getting released. We'll probably never know the real reason why Square cancelled it. If you're wondering why the game has the subtitle Alien 2, it's because that's the title of the movie in Japan. More recent re-releases tend to play up the Aliens part of the title rather than Alien 2, but in the 1980s, that's how Japanese fans of the movie would know it. Talking about the game itself is a bit of a problem. It's not a finished product, so I have a ton of issues with how it plays, and it's unfair to really pick on it that much for these. Maybe Square would have fixed these problems before it was released. Maybe some things were set up for the sake of demonstration rather than how they'd play in the finished game. However, a lot of my issues with Aliens exist in the MSX release, so I also think it's unlikely that they would have dug themselves out of this hole. But let's look what's here. The game vaguely resembles the plot of the movie Aliens. You're always playing as Ripley, who's running around with a big gun, and there's 5 platforming stages that she'll have to shoot her way through. A jumps and B shoots, and the first thing you're going to notice when you play Aliens is that the jump is really bad. It's a little floaty hop, and it's tough to get a feel for how far you can jump or how maneuverable you are. It really doesn't feel good. You can also press up when you jump to do a somersault in the air, which will get you a little bit more height, and is necessary to clear certain portions of the game. You can use the jump to get into small places just by jumping repeatedly. You do a little crouch when that happens, and the ceiling will try to push you out, but if you keep jumping, you'll eventually make it through. I get the impression that this was something that wasn't really implemented yet in the game. In the computer version, Ripley has a role, and that's probably what they were going to do here. Power-ups drop from eggs, and those eggs have to hatch first, and then you kill the facehugger that comes out. And the most important of those power-ups are boots, which will make you jump higher. And again, these power-ups are often required to progress in the game. The gun power-ups switch out your weapon. They all say shot, as though they were the shotgun, but you won't know what weapon it is until you pick it up. The shotgun that you start with can only have one bullet on the screen at a time, and a lot of things you encounter will require 2 bullets. You can upgrade that to a pulse rifle, which fires 2 shots, the smart gun, which has automatic fire when you hold down the button, a flamethrower that kills pretty much everything in one shot, and eventually there's a laser gun, though I didn't get that far in the game. You can also get grenades, and these work the same way where they're not progressive pickups. There's 2 different types of them, and you don't know which one you're getting until you touch the power-up. You throw the grenades by pressing up and hitting B while you're on the ground. The M40 grenade explodes into a little flame that sticks around on the ground. You can't throw another one until that fire goes away. The smart grenade explodes in a burst that flies upward and can destroy high-up enemies, though this one's a bit flaky and sometimes just doesn't do damage. Again, it's an unfinished game. You can collect armor and a helmet, and these will protect you from acid splashes. When you kill an alien, they explode, and that explosion does damage to you. The aliens also run up really close to you, or don't even appear at all until you're right on top of them, so you're going to take a lot of acid splash damage. Well, unless you memorize the placement of every enemy in the game and start dealing with them before they appear. This is really the only way that you can make progress in this version of Aliens. It's not as bad on the computer game version because the acid splash isn't as big, so presumably they were going to tweak this a bit. The helmet protects you from drops of acid coming from above, and these are placed in locations where you can't avoid getting hit. Presumably this is something that they did to demonstrate the effectiveness of the item. There's one more power-up that's an A, probably for attack power, though I'm not sure it's actually implemented. You turn it on by jumping up and then pressing up and B while you're in the air, and I think you're supposed to be doing more damage when this effect is on, but I really couldn't tell. At least I know it's not invulnerability. On the first stage, you're walking across the surface of the planet trying to reach the colony, and it's a pretty generic set of backgrounds and caves. Once you're in the colony, the visuals improve a lot, and here you're dealing with a maze of doors. If you go through one door, you might wind up back at the start of the level, or if you pick this door and then go right back through it again, you wind up at the boss. There's only one boss implemented in the game, and it shows up multiple times. I think you're supposed to jump up and shoot it in the head, but I couldn't consistently get the damage to work. As a result, I wasn't able to get past stage 2. However, there are other paths you could take. You can jump through the wall, for example. Or you can walk on some things that look like background objects. Basically, once you're inside the colony, the unfinished nature of the game becomes much more clear. The obvious question that arises here is, could Aliens have become a good game? And given Square's track record at the time, I'm inclined to go no. When they canceled this game, Square was just starting to build a reputation. They still had plenty of bad games hanging on to them. The stage design needs a complete revamp, the movement needs to be improved a lot, and there's still plenty of things that need to be implemented. This is an interesting historical artifact to have, and I think anybody who likes Aliens will want to try it out to see how it plays, but I don't think we missed out on something when Square canceled the project. I suspect that if they had finished it, then we'd be talking about in the same breath as a lot of other bad 8-bit licensed games.